Hi there, Henry from 911 Virgin, Porsche people in Uxbridge. Welcome to another video. We are doing today quite a special car. We're doing a 991 Turbo S. This is a 2013 car, so the Gen 1 Turbo S. Porsche and the 911 Turbo is something which goes back quite a long way. Porsche launched the 911 Turbo concept in, I think, 75, 76. And from then on, the 911 Turbo has essentially been the flagship car in the range. If you imagine Joe Normal, who gets up, goes to work, drives to work, every now and again goes on a holiday to Skegness or Cleethorpes or wherever it is, has a couple of weeks on holiday, comes back, this would be the car which would be his ideal car. So it's a car for all seasons, for all purposes, and it's supposed to be pretty good. For everyday mile munching, a 911 Turbo should be pretty good. Now, it's worth saying that Joe Normal would need a fairly decent job, because when this was new, it would cost you over £140,000. So it's not something that you would have if you were a bin man in Hackney or something like that. You would need to do quite a lot of overtime. So it does come at a price tag. You have some technical wizardry on this particular car as well. There's a couple of things you get. You got four-wheel steering on this car, and what Porsche did is at low speed, the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction to the front wheels, and that tightens the turning circle up and in effect virtually shortens the wheelbase on the car, so makes it kind of more nimble. At high speed, the rear wheels actually turn in the same direction as the front wheels, not the same amount, otherwise the car would just go sideways and not around the corner, which would be bad. But the idea of that is that it virtually lengthens the wheelbase on the car and makes it more stable. If you remember, when we did the last video, we talked about how Porsche had lengthened the wheelbase on the 991s, and it allowed them to make the car more stable at speed. And so by making four-wheel steering, or putting four-wheel steering on this car and setting it the way they have done, they've virtually lengthened the wheelbase by, I think it was 400 or 500 millimeters, which is huge. And so it gives it more stability at speed, which on this car is relevant, because this car has a top speed which is nigh on 200 miles an hour, which is quite quick. So they put that on. They also did dynamic engine mounts as well, which allows the engine mounts to vary the amount of flexibility they have and tighten and soften a bit. So a lot of technology on the car. Particularly from the rear, this is a very, very good looking car. I feel slightly uncomfortable saying it, because for a grown man to be admiring the rear end of a car is probably not normal, but it is stunningly good looking. Massively wide arches. I mean, they just kind of go on forever. Grille, spoiler. It's a bloody good looking car. It's lovely. As you walk around this car, there just isn't a bad angle on it. You know, it's stunning the way that the designers have thought of every angle, and the curves, the air intake, the way the wheels work with the arch, with the classic 911 window, and it's a really, really stunningly beautiful car. You know, the mirror detailing, everything is gorgeous. For me, I think Porsche's, you know, a 911 is almost my kind of Ford Escort in terms of I'm surrounded by them, and it's tempted to forget that they are supercars. Just bringing this car in here to do this bit of filming, you hop in it, start the engine up, reverse it in, and there's no drama to it. Whereas you imagine that a supercar should be a bit of a hassle. You've kind of got to get the gearbox warm before you can get it into gear and all this kind of stuff. And you don't in these. You just hop in it, turn the key, it fires up, and away you go. If you want to find something to be disappointed about in the car, that's the engine. Well, as much of the engine as you can see. 2 cooling fans, a little badge that says Turbo S and 3.8, so I'm guessing it's a 3.8 litre engine. Somewhere to put the oil should you need any, and somewhere to top up the water should you need to. But absolutely no sign of at all of an engine. So, you know, it's a bit disappointing. I want to see the engine and fall in love with it, and you can't. In terms of practicality, you've got fairly decent size boot in there, quite deep, so a bit of luggage, more kind of soft cases rather than suitcases. But again, it's a supercar, but a pretty practical supercar. I know I've been in quite a few supercars where, you know, you have to decide where you're going to kind of pack your underpants and your socks, but this is pretty good. And the 2 back seats fold down as well, so again, you can put a load of stuff in there. So, you know, genuinely, 2 people could go away and take a decent amount of luggage with them. The 911 Turbo has always given you a pretty decent, pretty spectacular interior, and this is no exception. Yeah, material-wise, leather, Alcantara, beautiful sports seats, hardback seats on here. You've got whatever that is, 8 or 9-way adjustable seats. So pretty much everything is adjustable electronically, including kind of lumbar supports and so on. And on memory as well. Nice Bose sound system, a little bit of carbon trim in there, PCM navigation. As I say, the back seats, front seats fold forward, back seats fold down, so you've got storage capacity in there. But yeah, it's a pretty lovely interior, and yeah, it looks well. The rear seats in a 911 have always been one of its key selling points, and something which kind of sets it apart from other supercars. You know, there is capacity in the back. It's not huge. At 6'2", I wouldn't want to go down to the south of France in the back of one of these things, but particularly if you put the passenger seat forward a little way, you know, you can kind of get kids in here, or sort of smaller people in here, and it's there. You know, a 2-seater is only a 2-seater with absolutely 0 options, but the 911 does give you capacity and you know, that kind of, if you need permission to buy a car, and you can do it, but the kids have to be able to fit in so we can go out as a family, you know, it is there. And also, you know, as well as the kids, you've got kind of the seats that fold down. You've got split rear seats there, so you can put a bit of luggage and bits and pieces in there as well. So yeah, you know, quite a practical car. Well, as a car, it certainly looks the part, and you know, the specs seem fairly impressive. Guess we better take it out for a drive and see what it's like out on the road. The very first video we made was a 911 Turbo. It was the flat nose turbo, and they were an incredibly crude car with 300 horsepower strapped to them, nothing in the way of driver aids at all. It was just you, the car, and mind how you go. You could get yourself into all manner of difficulties, and the car didn't help you out at all. As the turbos have evolved, they've become more friendly. They've tamed the beast, if you will. But I've always said that driving a turbo is a bit like borrowing your dad's car, in that, I don't know, you never felt necessarily comfortable in it. Once you've got to know it, and once you've owned turbos for a long time, you can chuck them about a bit, but they're not a nimble, delicate car in the same way, let's say, a GT3 is, where you place it, but then the GT3 is quite a harsh car. So the turbo, I think, is Porsche's way of producing the ultimate car for everyday use. And this car is stunning in the way that it does just that. If you want to, you can hop in the car, pop down the shops, get a loaf of bread, no hassle at all. Similarly, you could get in the car, chuck some luggage in, and you could drive down to the south of France, just stop in for fuel and a coffee. Again, no problem at all. But it's also an absolute beast of a car in terms of its performance. This car has got 550 horsepower and 0 to 60 time of under 3 seconds, but you don't really judge this car in terms of a 0 to 60 time. It's really kind of 0 to 100 mile an hour times that you are looking at with this car. It's a kind of Jekyll and Hyde car, in that on the one hand the driving, the chassis, the technology is doing everything to make me feel safe, secure, to highlight and magnify my limited driving ability. It's so well mannered, you know, it feels secure, it feels safe, it's lovely. But the performance is so brutal. It's almost like being in a fighter plane. You need a G-force suit. It's amazing. And it's a weird feeling that as we're driving on this road, that sense that I'm the quickest car on this bit of tarmac. Because if you're doing 50, 60, 70 miles an hour and you put your foot down, there's nothing that would touch this in terms of performance. It's a supercar, a genuine supercar, and I don't really see Porsches as supercars because I'm surrounded by them every day. They're my normal, they're my Ford Escort, and I don't know, is a normal 911 a supercar? I don't know, but this certainly is. There's a huge amount of technology on this car, and if I'm being totally honest with you, I couldn't tell you which bits of the technology make the car work, but the sum total of them is that they do, whether it's the four-wheel steer, whether it's the dynamic engine mounts, the suspension, but they all conspire to make a really docile chassis. It's not a boring chassis, but it's helping me out. I'm not feeling nervous or tense or afraid to kind of push on with the car. It just deals with everything, whether it's nasty bumpy roads, it's not throwing me around at all. If you go into a corner hard, you know, the car seems to kind of almost tighten up and, you know, turn into the corner as you'd want it to. The steering isn't as sharp as something like a GT3, but I'm not expecting it to be. And to be honest with you, if it was, it would probably put me on edge a little bit. You know, I quite like the fact that it's a beautifully balanced thing. There's no one part of the car that's overtaking the other in terms of the handling and so on it. And it's so different, I think, to, well, certainly the turbos of old, but, you know, even a few years ago, you'd get in the car and a turbo's never been a slow car, but you sometimes feel that the chassis is a little bit behind the power, but with this car, not at all. There's always quite a lot of discussion and debate with Porsches as to whether you should have a manual or a PDK gearbox, and there's sort of fans of each. The 991 Turbo S was only available with a PDK gearbox, and I think I know the reason why, and it's because the performance is so great. I don't think we as human beings could keep up with the gear changing. You just can't change manually quick enough to deal with the power. You know, the acceleration is so brutal, you're dealing with so much as you're accelerating from 0 to lots of miles an hour very quickly, that I think the manual gearbox, first of all, you wouldn't be able to change as quickly as this PDK gearbox, but I think you've got so much else to be dealing with that the PDK just makes absolute sense. It almost doesn't warrant talking about, but in terms of fuel economy, if you drive this car carefully, you'll get somewhere around 30 to the gallon out of it, which for what it is isn't a bad shout really. But then of course it's also fair to say that if you don't drive quite so carefully, you will get somewhat less than 30 to the gallon. So it's down to you to act responsibly, kids, and save the planet. In terms of the kind of soundtrack as you're driving along, it's not Porsche's most engaging or most enthralling soundtrack in terms of engine noise, but I don't think the turbo is supposed to be. You know, it's not a kind of leery car that fills the cabin with noise. It's supposed to be quite a grown-up car, as I have said, you know, it's almost your dad's car. And the reality is, if you're going to drive from here to somewhere a long, long way away, and you're going to, you know, cross continents in a day, you do want to get out the other end feeling reasonably refreshed. And so it does the job. You know, it's a purposeful noise. You can hear what the engine's doing. But ultimately, this is a kind of a comfortable drive. You know, it's designed to deal with the miles in a nice, pleasant, mild-mannered way, albeit slightly quick. So all the Turbo S's came with the Sport Chrono package, which gives you a selection of buttons on here, and I've been driving around in sport mode, which seems to be quite a happy balance between performance and the way it drives. I've just popped it into Sport Plus. That's pretty fierce. It's holding the gears. It changes the whole feel of the car in terms of the brutality of the gear change. It's a bit too much for ordinary road use, but if you want to have a mad 5 minutes, hit the Sport Plus button. So Porsche quoted a 0 to 60 time for this car of a bit under 3 seconds, around about 3 seconds, but they're always a little bit conservative. And the rumour has it, it'll do it in a bit less than 3 seconds. And I would agree. It's brutal, absolutely brutal. It's a kind of strange car in that, on the one hand, it's such a easy car to drive and such a mild-mannered chassis, but in terms of raw power, holy moly, it just pushes you in the back. It's like I've been brutalised in the prison showers. It's unbelievable. You need a G-suit to hold your stomach muscles in as you're accelerating. And the thing is, it keeps going on and on and on. It's not like you've got a sweet spot to 60 miles an hour and then it sort of peters off. This thing just keeps going. It's got a top speed of nearly 200 miles an hour, and it'll get there. It's not going to struggle at any point. It's unbelievable. Well, what can you say? 991 Turbo S. An incredible car. I mean, in every respect, amazing. You know, it's supremely powerful. 550 horsepower, 700 newton meters of torque, 750 newton meters on overboost. And on the road, that translates to a phenomenally rapid car. You know, the brutal acceleration, you know, not just from standstill, but you're traveling at 40, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour and you put your foot down and it's like you're just accelerating from standing. The car just goes bang, you know, pushes you in the back and it keeps going on and on and on. The acceleration is almost quite tiring. You know, you've almost got to tense your stomach muscles. But the chassis is so well developed that it copes with it to the point where it's doable. You know, if there was any degree of nervousness in the chassis, it would be a scary car to drive, and it's not. It's not scary. It's quite invigorating. You know, you put your foot down and it's almost like a drug. You just want to keep doing it and accelerating. And it's a weird feeling knowing that you're on a bit of tarmac and you are the quickest car on there. There's nothing that can out accelerate you. If you get someone, you know, nibbling up at your back bumper, sort of trying to egg you on or saying, why aren't you going any quicker? You put your foot down and they are very soon a very tiny speck in the mirror. And I think with that sort of power comes responsibility, because it's very easy if you do accelerate to get into license losing speeds very quickly, and so you do have to be careful. With that in mind, there will be an element of society that says there's absolutely no justification for a car like this whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, I can't justify a car that does 200 miles an hour or that accelerates from 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds or 2.6 seconds or whatever it is. But then I can't justify chocolate. I can't justify Haagen-Dazs ice cream. But they're both bloody lovely and the world's a better place for them. So, you know, I think it's a better place for cars like this. And I think if you're lucky enough to own something like this, or even just to drive it, it's a treat. I mean, I've really enjoyed this afternoon, you know, getting to know this car and taking it out for a drive and making this film. It's been absolutely brilliant. So there you go. I hope it's given you a little bit of an insight into this as a car. As always, you know, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for subscribing to you guys that do. Thanks for commenting. You know, we try to respond to the comments as quickly as we can. And yeah, I'm Henry. We're 911 Virgin, the Porsche people in Uxbridge. Many thanks for watching. Stay safe. Goodbye.